We pack up our stuff in Seward and head to Homer. In Homer, we stayed on what is known as the Homer Spit. It is located on the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula. The Spit is a 4.5-mile-long piece of land jetting out into the Ketchikan Bay. The Spit is also home to the Homer Boat Harbor. The word spit is a geographical term for a narrow coastal land formation formed by sediment deposits. On our first evening there, we decided to walk to the town. Along the way, we saw the boats and the sea otters. We visited several stores and even found a hidden swing. Our last stop on the way back was a place that made fresh homemade mini donuts. When we got back, the kids went up to a lookout point in the campground to play some Uno. On top of where they were playing Uno, there was an eagle. He was there for a long time, and we were able to see him sitting up there just looking around as we looked at him. Once again, our campground in Homer had fabulous views. The next morning, it was raining a little bit, but we took off to walk back into town because we had a kayak and hiking tour planned for the day. We arrived to Allen's Water Taxi, which was the Ketchikan Bay Adventures. The first thing they did was give us all rain pants to keep us dry as we went on our kayak tour. We loaded into a boat to go out to where the kayaks were located. We took about a 15-minute water taxi across the island to reach Halibut Cove. The only way to reach Halibut Cove is by boat. So the people who lived in those houses have to take a boat to get home or go to the grocery store. When we got across there, we were loaded up into kayaks. We spent the morning in double kayaks, kayaking around the cove. It rained on us a little while we were at kayaking, but that didn't stop us. Our guides said we were one of the quickest groups. When we finished kayaking, we arrived on a beach. Once the kayaks were put away, we decided to sit down and have a quick lunch before we began our hike. We took the Saddle Trail, which is approximately 1 mile with about 400 feet elevation gain, and it only starts in Halibut Cove. It led us to Glacier. When we arrived at the glacier, we had approximately 30 to 45 minutes to sit, enjoy the view, feel the water. You'll notice that the glacier had been capping because there are ice chunks located in the water. We touched the water and enjoyed the view for a little bit before it was time to head back down. Once we arrived back on the beach, we had to wait a little bit for Alan's water taxi to come back and get us and transport us back to Homer. On the way back, it was a little bit rough because we were in the open ocean. Overall, it was a wonderful day and we had a great time kayaking and exploring the glacier with the hike. Every good hike deserves some ice cream, or in this case, gelato. After we got our gelato, we started our hike back to the campground. We got up early the next morning to head from Homer to Anchorage. We made it to Anchorage at exactly 11, and we were actually able to get into our site, which was great because we had to take JC to the airport because he had to make a trip home in order to do some work. So he dropped him off at the airport and said goodbye for a few days. He flew home for a meeting for work, and then he's supposed to fly back a few days later. In Anchorage, we were able to drive to a spot where we could watch the planes take off from the airport. From there, we decided to go to Anchorage and take a trolley tour of the area. Our tour guide, Alice, was great, and she took us on a 15-mile tour of Anchorage. It was a little rainy this day, so being inside for the tour was great. She stopped us by an underground house. The whole house is underground. You can see the few skylights. Then we went by the fault line where there was a major earthquake and there are houses down the hill. Then we went to the seaplane airport. In Alaska, you can get your seaplane permit at 14, and you can drive a seaplane at 16 years old. They use a lot of seaplanes around here to get to places. It saves a considerable amount of time. One of the people we met told us that they had a cell phone brought to them via seaplane because it was too far to drive. We found a gift shop where everybody found some exciting gifts, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and a Don't Moose With Me blanket. Next, we went to Bass Pro Shop. We were looking for a few things, and we were excited to see all the animals there. As JC made his connecting flight to St. Louis, we went to the laundromat. After being gone for 2 weeks, we had a lot of laundry, and we spent a lovely Sunday evening in the laundromat. Here are our souvenirs from the Polar Bear Outlet store. Good thing we had a coupon. And then you will see that JC arrived in St. Louis and made it to our house. The next morning, the first thing on the docket was to go and get an oil change at the Ford dealer. It took a little bit for us to sit there, but we got our oil changed and we were off. The next stop was Costco to stock up on a little bit of food. After we grabbed a pizza from Costco for lunch, we were able to walk to the Ulu knife factory from our campground, where they make the Ulu knives. JC was ready for his big presentation at home. We drove back down to Gerwood because the boar tide was supposed to be coming in this day. A boar tide is a wall of water created when a rapidly incoming tide rushes into shallow, narrowing inlet against an outgoing current. In Alaska, this phenomenon is famous in the Turnagain Arm. How it forms: the Cook Inlet has a massive tidal range, up to 30 feet. We had a low tide that day of -2. So when the tide goes out, it leaves behind expansive shallow mudflats. When the incoming tide returns, the narrow geography of the Turnagain Arm forces the massive column of water to bunch up, creating a continuous breaking wave that rolls in like a wall of water. The wave typically ranges from 2 to 10 feet tall and can travel inland at speeds of 10 to 24 miles per hour. The boar tide arrives roughly 2 to 3 hours after low tide in Anchorage. The boar tide is highly popular among local surfers because the wave moves continuously up the inlet, so surfers can ride a single wave for miles. We drove to a couple different spots to watch the surfers and the boar tide. When we were finished, we found a cute bakery in Gerwood to have a quick cinnamon roll before we headed back to Anchorage. While we were having our cinnamon roll, JC was preparing for his presentation at work. We got up early the next morning because we had a hike scheduled on the Matanuska Glacier. It was approximately a 2-hour drive from our campsite in Anchorage out to the glacier. The glacier is massive, 27 miles long and 4 miles wide, active glacier. To walk on the glacier, you must have certified guides. So we had 2 guides with us that day. Shout out to Daniel and Theo. To get to the glacier, you have to drive on someone's private property. So you have to pay a fee to the people to drive on their property in order to get to the glacier. Daniel and Theo, our guides, drove us to the head of the glacier where we could start our hike. First, we had to walk down this road, which led us to a lake in some of the melted glacier water, and we had to walk across like a dock to get to the actual glacier. We were lucky that it was just our family who were with Daniel and Theo that day. So since JC was back at home, it was just the 5 of us taking a walk on the glacier. Notice we had to wear helmets the whole time on. And when we got towards the front of the ice here, we were putting on micro spikes in order to help with traction with the ice. While we are hiking on the glacier, JC finished his presentation and is getting ready to head back to see us. Here we are learning how to walk with our crampons. So we put bigger spikes on our feet and they are teaching us how to walk up the glacier. You'll notice we are hiking up a bright blue line. That bright blue line is called a crevasse. It is a crack in the glacier that is refrozen together, and it's bright blue due to the density of the ice. We were on top of the glacier here, and we were able to walk all around and look and see things. Our guides hooked up some lines so we could walk down and look deep into that, looks like a little crack, but it's called a moulin. It was about 30 feet down and we could look and see into that space. JC made his flight to come back to us. This time he had someone from work take him to Chicago and he had a direct flight back to us. We took turns looking down into the moulin to see what it looked like down there. It was really cool. Then we hiked on to a new spot. At this place, we needed to use a rope to hike up even higher. Our guides set up the rope for us so we could climb up. After we all hiked to the top, we looked for a spot with a view, and they took us to a spot where we could eat lunch and enjoy the fabulous view of the glacier. Then they set up a rope for us so we could go down into the glacier and see what it was like from the bottom. We were harnessed in so that we could walk backwards to get down to the bottom. Since we were on a glacier, whenever you needed water, you found a stream of water and you could just fill up your water bottle and drink the pure glacier water. Once we all make it down to the bottom, we were able to explore the bottom of the glacier. This is our guides, Daniel and Theo, coming down. We were able to walk down on the bottom and see all the different parts of the glacier and where it was over our heads, looking like waves. And we were able to walk through the whole thing down here. To be honest, this was my favorite part. When we were finished looking around down there, we had to hike back up to the top of the glacier so we could start making our way back out. The glacier water is blue because highly compressed ice acts like a natural color filter, absorbing the red light and reflecting the blue light. Everyone really loved this excursion. It was one of our favorite parts of the trip. You can see a map here of exactly where we hiked along the glacier. And here is us taking everything back off and giving all the borrowed equipment back to our guides. On the way out, we saw some goats just hanging out alongside of the road. And there was lots of construction on the road as well. We made it back to our campsite with a few minutes to spare before it was time to go back to the airport and pick JC up. His flight was on time and he made it right back.